Okay, you ready? Let's start with our first question. So this one has been asked a lot so far. This one comes from David from the United States. He says, sometimes at school, all I seem to hear is profanity, vulgarity, and faithlessness. Many of other students and teachers go out of their way to point out that there is no God. And I am only in 8th grade. How do I stand up for my beliefs, and how do I avoid becoming discouraged based on the direction this world seems to be going?
Well, I'm personally excited to answer a question from a young man named David. And though he's in the 8th grade, what he's experiencing is not new. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area quite some time ago. It would be ancient history for all of you. But it was at a time when there was great upheaval in that part of California, and it spread to many other places throughout North America and the world. And in the school that I attended, there were only just a few Latter-day Saints. So I think I've lived that experience of having the opposition from teachers and all kinds of other people. I would invite David, this young man, to study carefully the story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. They were not willing to worship the god of Nebuchadnezzar. They weren't going to pray to this image. Nebuchadnezzar was very angry, and so he had them cast into the fires. If you'll read that, it's intriguing to me that their flesh was not burned. And this is the part I find most remarkable. And the smell of the smoke did not come upon them. In other words, the stink of the smoke didn't linger on them. Now, if you've ever been to a campfire or you've been around a fire, it's hard not to have the stink of the smoke stick on you. And if David will prayerfully read that story, what was it about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that enabled them to be saved and preserved? But more importantly, perhaps, how did the stink of the smoke, how did the influence of all that opposition not come upon them? Now, obviously, it was his faith in God. But there are some other things in that episode that David can go read about and learn from it for himself by the power of the Holy Ghost. What was it that brought about that protecting power? And then if David will look for some other similar kinds of episodes in the Scriptures, who else seemed to be alone and had to face that type of opposition? If I just sit here and say, well, David, you should do these 4 things, that won't help the David who asked this question. But if he'll take that little bit of direction that I just tried to provide, and he'll go into the Scriptures looking for similar kinds of episodes, as he does so, the Holy Ghost will teach and tutor him in a very individual way about his circumstances, where he lives, what he needs to do to make sure that the stink of the smoke of the opposition doesn't stick on him.
Thank you.
Or Jan.
Well, I was just thinking that these problems have been around ever since the Old Testament, since the beginning of time. So we don't live in a time that's really unique. Maybe there are different challenges, but we just need to know that we can liken the Scriptures to ourselves. We can bring them alive as we do that. And it's just a wonderful way to learn about other people and how they, in God's way, did what they needed to do at the time they lived. And then I was thinking too, we had an opportunity many years ago to be with a group of students here in Salt Lake City and meet with President Hinckley. And one of the students asked, what would you teach us that we could take back to the students at BYU, Idaho? And President Hinckley made a remarkable comment that I've never forgotten, that I think is so helpful for us that live in this day and this time where we do have challenges and temptations. And he said, have faith. Faith in the Lord, faith in yourself, and faith in the future. That just makes me hopeful. That even though times are tough and the world is full of moral pollution, just like our earth has pollution, that we can do well, that we can survive with faith.